Hey there, it's Jennifer Britton. It is February the 2nd, and I want to welcome you back to Blab number 3, really 3.5. This is our monthly Blab here at the Teams 365, and I really want to welcome you. I did this a little bit earlier, but forgot to hit record, so thanks for those who might be back, or for those that are looking at this after the fact. Some of you may know us here at Potentials Realized. We offer training, consulting, and coaching services. We really specialize in both support for team leaders and their teams. I'm Jennifer Britton, the founder, and I'm also the author of Effective Group Coaching and From One to Many Best Practices for Team and Group Coaching. I do these monthly blabs. Right now, the current format is blabs. Back in 2014 and 2015, when we were starting our daily posts, we did the Team Leader Breakfast Cafe series. And in the Breakfast Cafe series, it was a short 15 to 20-minute call at breakfast. Now we're doing these lunch and learns, also 15 minutes, really hoping that this will be an opportunity for you to get some new tools, ideas, and resources to help you be more effective. If you haven't checked out Blabs 1 and 2, December's Blab was really an overview of some key 2016 themes for team leaders. I think you'll be interested in that. And in our Blab last month, we were looking at goal setting. Today's focus is on meeting management. So I'm drawing upon some recent posts at the Teams 365 blog. If you haven't checked out our daily posts, we're now in the 760 realm. We're well into year 3. And I really have felt compelled to post daily on team leader issues. I do a lot of work as a trainer, as a coach. Every day I'm hearing about team leadership issues, and that really dovetails into my former world of work. Some of you may know that for more than a decade I worked in the global sector from the early 90s up until 2004 when I returned back to Canada. And during those days, I would lead multinational teams. Was a great piece of work. And the only thing that really brought me back was a bad eye that I now have. So the great thing is I can work virtually, don't have to jump on and off planes. And that's why today's topic of virtual team meetings is so important and passionate for me. So I am now recording. I've remembered to hit record and want to share with you sort of 3 main areas in this next 15 minutes. We're going to keep it to about 15 minutes. First section is Virtual Facilitation 101. And to get you thinking and connecting with the topic, I'd like you to think about a recent team meeting you had virtually. As I said a few minutes ago, we live in an era of death by meeting. Managers are spending anywhere from 40 to 80% of their time in meetings. And it's very common in the work that I do, whether I'm going into organizations physically or going in virtually, is to hear just how exhausted team leaders are today with meeting after meeting after meeting. My hope is that by implementing a few of these tweaks and tricks and tweets, you'll be able to really get more effective with not only your time, but the time of the people that you work with. So I'm drawing upon, in this first 5 minutes, blog post 750 at the Teams 365 blog. It's all about Virtual Facilitation 101. And while in-person and virtual facilitation is very similar, there are some nuances that I think are very important to be looking at. Number 1, be really strong on process. As we bring people together, often across languages, across countries and time zones, it's really important to set people up for success. Let people know how long is a meeting, what is the agenda, how long are we actually going to be spending together, and what roles are you expected to play. Number 2, if you can, introduce video streaming. Now, there are, especially on a global level, still a lot of areas where video streaming is not feasible, it's not practical, it just does not work with bandwidth issues. But if you can, and everyone is on board, it's great to actually see people's face. As I was saying earlier today, we could be using a platform like Blab. Of course, it's not secure. We could also be using other platforms like Zoom, GoToLiveMeeting, GoToWebinar, WebEx. I'm not endorsing any of these. There are several that I use, including Zoom. I think Zoom is a great one in terms of being able to share our screen and also see each other. So if we were a team, we could actually physically see each other around the room. The nice thing about the streaming option is it helps connect people. You now put a face to a name. I think really we are human beings. We are human creatures. We love to see people eye to eye, or at least see faces. Second note is if you are on camera, you're less likely to be doing the multitasking dance. And I think we've all been here. I have my computer on, I might have two computers going, I'm checking my email, I'm responding. We're really not being present. And I think lack of presence is a big concern in a lot of team environments today. So if you can, introduce the video streaming and make sure that the platform you're using matches what the purpose of the meeting really is. Practice it before you use it, okay? So Blab is a newer platform for me. This is the second time around doing this because I forgot to hit the record button. You'll want to make sure that you have all these little things in place, and it does take some practice. And I say that as someone who is in the virtual realm every day. I spend the bulk of my day, at least 6 hours a day, in virtual meeting rooms. Blab is one that I'm not on always, but it's a natural fact when I'm on a bridge line call, I'll hit the *9 or hit the record function, or if I'm at other ones, I will also make sure that I'm using the proper key to hit the record. The downside of recording is not everyone is engaged, but at the same time, it may be really appropriate to get people really more feedback, especially if you're working with a global team. People in Asia, 12 hours ahead typically than those of us here on the East Coast of North America. I know for me, it's important to keep those people in the loop, but they may not physically be present. Finally, one more piece of advice, and again, this is from Teams 365, number 750, expect the unexpected. It will happen. The recording will not work or others. So make sure that you have some backups in the event that technology doesn't work. And I think it's fair to say, you know, rather than getting flustered by it, just keep working through it. You know, there is just the eventuality that something will happen, and it doesn't help if you get flustered. So we're going to move on in this next 5 minutes, and as we're sort of making that transition, I'd like you to think about what is one of the tips that I've just shared, whether it's about the process, video streaming, making sure your platform matches, practice, or expect the unexpected. What is the one tip you want to remember? And with that, I'm going to go on to blog post, Teams 365 blog post 749, which I termed Virtual Meeting Engagement. And this is actually a very recent post from January 19th, 2016. As I started off, as I often say and write, we live in an era of death by conference call. Many of you may have read Patrick Lencioni's Death by Meeting. I certainly see we live in an era of death by conference call. To make your calls accessible and also successful, excuse as the other phone goes, make sure that you are doing things like connecting people early on with the WIFM principle. What's in it for me? What's in it for me? Get people to reflect on what they want out of the call. And I did this a little earlier on, asking you to think about what's important. Think of a recent meeting. After each one of these 3 sections of content, I'm going to be getting you to think about what's one thing you want to do. Get people to write it down. Also, we want to use visuals. Blab is not a great channel for it. I can show you something like this, but of course, that's not very visual for most of you. Many other platforms do use a screen sharing where I could have, actual screen up and running, and then the face as well. It's key in engagement in virtual meetings to keep the pace moving. Now, pace is really quite mutable. You'll want to know or want to consider who your group members are. While lengthy discussions are always needed, attention span is critical. So notice when too long is too long. Finally, make sure that you're able to change that pace regularly. As a long-term and a long-standing trainer, I know that every 7 to 10 minutes when we're face-to-face, we want to adjust the pace. I may move us into a new activity, get people to turn to their neighbor to have a conversation. In the virtual domain, it's even faster than that. And here goes another call, so excuse that as that's ringing in the background. We want to change the pace regularly. So make sure that you are, and I'm just going to mute this as the, it's just going to give up the unknown numbers. So there we go. Change your pace regularly. And finally, where possible, make sure that you are providing those eyeball-to-eyeball moments. All right, those are 5 meeting tip engagements. Always connect people early on with the WIFM, use visuals, keep the pace moving, where possible, try to provide eyeball-to-eyeball opportunities and change the pace regularly. We're now moving on to our last section of this call, and I'm pulling on Teams 365 number 211, which takes us right back to July 30th, 2014. Again, if you've never checked out the Teams 365 blog, I hope you will do so. We can be found at potentialsrealized.com, and we are a daily blog for team leaders and their team members. You don't have to be a team leader to benefit from this. I think anyone is going to find many of these tips practical. Also, just a little plug, we are wrapping up our first annual Team Leaders Survey. We want to hear from you. What are the topic areas you find of interest? How would you like materials delivered to you? Do you prefer a blab over a webinar, over a teleconference? And it's interesting. I think a lot of people are not as familiar with blabs yet in the corporate arena, so we may be experimenting in the coming months with the more traditional webinars to meet your needs. Wanted to wrap up our call today just sharing with you 5 faux pas, or 5 mistakes that can really get us into trouble. There are really 5 things that could be pitfalls that you want to avoid. Number 1, no agreements or baseline on how to meet. Be clear on what your agreements are. Many virtual facilitators are hesitant to create a structure and agreements around how you want to make the meeting most effective. Standard agreements like starting and ending the meeting on time, having an agenda with timelines keep the meeting on track. Faux pas number 2, no agenda. This is a big one. We always want to make sure that we do have an agenda and stick to the agenda. Circulate it well in advance so people get a chance to feed into it. And number 4, a loose hand on time. Virtual meetings can go awry when facilitators do not keep to time or ask the group where time should be spent. Number 3, I jumped over, that's my eye, trying to update those who dial in late. Have some agreements as a team. What happens if someone's late? Otherwise, you're going to spend half of your time updating as Susie and Bob and Sujit and John all get on the line. Really be clear on what people's responsibilities are if they are late and how they can catch up. And this is where a recording is useful as long as people know that they're expected to be live on the call. Finally, virtual faux pas meeting management number 5, not coming to decisions. And I think we see this in meetings after meetings in today's environment. It's probably the biggest trap for leaders. We want to make sure that we are being very clear on what agreements have been put in place, who's going to do what, and how are we going to follow up? What is that follow-up cycle? Otherwise, meetings become a tremendous waste of time. So enjoy these tips. I hope that as you go about your meetings this week, and no doubt you'll have one, if not more, hope that you'll keep these in mind. And really, whether you are in a seat of being the chair or an influencer around the table, we can all get better and tighter with our meeting management. For more refreshers, if you didn't have a chance to take notes, please visit us online, potentialsrealized.com/Teams365 blog, and that is Teams-365-blog. My name is Jennifer Britton. Really been a pleasure to be with you here today. We're back in the month of March. It will either be here on the blab or we may go to a webinar platform. Again, we want your input. I'd love to hear what's useful for you. You can always email me directly, info@potentialsrealized.com. We're going to be continuing to look at and drill down into the blab posts that I provided back in December. So I said some of the themes for this year were things like virtualization, goals, collaboration. We're actually going to go into the topic of coaching next month, my area. So conversations as a currency, tapping into excellence. Coaching is all about helping people get to where they want to go faster, quicker, better. We want to be listening. We want to be asking better questions. We want to be connecting and be present with those that we are working with. So stay tuned. Stay tuned at the Teams 365 blog. I'll be posting more on that. And again, thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed our call. As you go to wrap up, I'd like you to write down one thing that you're taking out of today's blab and start to put that into practice. What's one thing you can do in the next 24 hours, not in the next week, but in the next 24 hours to get that into action? Again, signing off here. Have a great month. I'll see you back here. Jennifer Britton. Take care. Bye-bye.